by Ken Willer.
Here we go. Hey, everybody. All right, I'm giving a talk on SwiftUI for React devs via an NFT drum machine. My name is Ken. If you want to read a bunch of trash, it's Ken_Wheeler on Twitter. And I tried SwiftUI, which was super interesting. So normally, historically at least, I have to take this headphone off because it's fucking with me. But I had traditionally written React Native. Most of the time, if you're making a mobile app and you know React Native will cover it. But I wanted to make a music app. So you have to go a little bit deeper. And while it's theoretically possible, it's a huge pain in the ass to bridge all the music shit that you would need to make like a drum machine app. So I decided to finally do it in SwiftUI. And what SwiftUI is it's this thing from Apple where it's a modern way to declare user interfaces for any Apple platform. So it's kind of React-y compared to how you normally have done it. So much like React, it has like components, right, which are views. It has, I guess, what could be considered props. It has state. So it's kind of familiar coming into it as a React dev or a JavaScript dev because it kind of looks like JavaScript, it's just a little bit different. So it brings huge developer experience improvements to what had typically been a super pain in the ass workflow coming from the web, because on the web we have like the most instant feedback, dive in, tear it apart, do your thing, it's no problem setup. So native has typically been a little weird. You're like, oh my God, I'm waiting for this to compile, like what are we doing here? But with SwiftUI and I guess like newer versions of Swift and everything, now you have this little preview thing on the right. So it's like hot reloading, and it's fantastic. You just write your code there, and it's not just visual. Like it's actually like a little simulator in there. Like you could click it and go to different pages and do whatever you want, right? So here is just some basic view and layout here. If you're coming from React, this struct content view, right? That's like your function or your class, depending on which React you're doing, right? And as far as like layout is concerned, right, we're used to like Flexbox. So you might be used to having your Flexbox and justifying the items or aligning the items or what have you. And here it's a little bit different. Here you have a V stack and an H stack, and that is literally how to center a div. It's that easy. You just put that in there and it centers your div for you. Now, as far as getting those two letters or words across from one another, right, you use this magic spacer view. And what that does is if you have one thing and you another thing and you put a spacer, it just, right? So if you look at the position of spacer and then we hit the next one, right? Now it's on the outside of both of them, so it takes both of them and, right? So it's kind of wild, like layout-wise, compared to what you might be used to in JavaScript. Excuse me, I'm gonna enjoy some of this delicious white wine. It's super fucking hot out here, so. So this is how props work in Swift. So you have your view. We have the content view, which is kind of like the main view, and it's showing our name view. Our name view up here, we say var, much like in JavaScript. Var name string, right? You give it a type, and then you're not really giving it a default value, you're just initializing it. In our body, right, we're taking the name and doing text with it. And then in our content view, when we use it, we can use this named name argument and feed it through like that. And that's basically props. State is a similar kind of setup here. You use what looks like a decorator, right? But you use that state, and you have var count equals 1. You initialize it to a value. Unlike React, there's no set state. You just update it. So right in here, we have this button. We can display in text what you're seeing there, in between the quotes with the little / and the brackets. That's how you do like string interpolation. So since that's technically like an int, that's why you have to wrap that in that. It's not, like casts it to string for you. And then down here, you just do +=1, and and then it's just magic. There's no set state shenanigans. Just shit works. So that's like the initial Swift primer, and I'm gonna teach you how to build a goddamn NFT drum machine. Right, so I built one. It started off as just a drum machine because most of the drum machine stuff on iOS is kind of weak, and I wanted to be able to make beats in a hotel room. So I started off on a drum machine, and then I thought it would be kind of dope if you could load up music NFTs. I've been seeing a lot on Twitter, people talking about music NFTs. So I said, why not have something to actually do with them? And that's to compose with it. And this is some of the prior art, right? Over here on the left, we have Koala Sampler, which is fantastic. So we come here, doop, 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 doop. This is a sequencer in here, right? So it's like, right? And that'll make a lot more sense once we put a snare in there, right? We'll sequence that there. Then we'll take some hats. What's up? Oh, nice. All right, yeah, let's just put that shit up against the back of this fucking thing. All right, cool.
Bag so it doesn't leak too much on yours.
All right, so put some hats in. Put some stuff in here, right? Okay, yeah, that's fun. That's just drums, right? But we can come in here, and I could pick a pad, and I could go here, and it loads an NFT. And these are NFTs, right, that I uploaded here to OpenSea. It'll load these up, and you could load it in to the drum machine, and then put it on a pad, and you say, well, where did that load? That didn't load there?
Fuck it up one more time, Kenneth. Fuck it up. Fuck it up. Fuck. Fuck it up one more time, Kenneth. Fuck it up. Fuck it up.
All right, yeah, so that's an NFT drum machine. I'm gonna tell you how to make that, right? So, I can't see anything. All right, so the requirements, I can't talk with this on at the same time, so. The requirements for making that NFT drum machine when I wanted to do it was, first, you need a sampler, right? And that's what loads and plays the sound files. So when I'm hitting those and tuning those and doing all those things, you need a sampler. Next, you need a step sequencer. That's how we say what drum pattern we want, with the order of the notes. And the other requirement was the ability to load NFTs. And I could show you the whole source, but it's bananas, so I'm just gonna show these very simple steps of how to get that done, right? So the most important part here, and I'm gonna try and hurry this up in respect for Scott here, is Audio Kit. And what Audio Kit is it's a library in iOS for working with audio. Whoop, whoop. So you create a thing called a conductor, right? And this is where all the audio logic lives. You create your engine, you create a sampler, and you have a start function. And what that does is that instantiates a mixer. It sets your engine output to the mixer. You add your sampler as the input to the mixer. So it's like hooking up a stereo. And then you say engine start. As far as loading a sample, this is what this looks like in Swift. You have your sampler instance, and you say, sampler load audio file. It's like a joke. It's like hilariously straightforward code. And then, wouldn't you know it, to play it, you just hit sampler.play. It's incredibly easy. So next up is your sequencer, right? So with a sequencer, that is gonna run on a loop, and it's gonna play, patterns of notes that you've defined. So for here, we say loop enabled true, right? So it'll loop around, and we can deal with a bar loop. I say it's a 4-bar loop. I set the initial tempo to 75. And then I'm gonna create this thing called a callback instrument. And what that says is, if you have a sequencer, and that sequencer, when it's coming around, hits the note, you're actually gonna get a function callback when it's time to play that note. And then I call sampler.play, right? And then you do the plumbing underneath there. So if we wanted to do a sequence by hand and not by UI, like you saw when the grid turned into the Tetris or whatever, here you say sequence.add right into the track, and you add your note number, your position, and your duration. So 0, 1, 2, and 3, like that. That's very Jersey Shore. That's and then you start getting into like 0.25, 0.5 if you want to, but that's besides the point. Loading NFTs is actually a breathtaking pain in the ass. Not loading the NFT itself, but actually finding the NFTs is super difficult. But thanks to the fine folks at QuickNode, right, it is not. So it's a Web3 developer platform. It's basically an API for blockchain. So anything you want to do, they have something for. Like if I had to go and like index and scrape NFT ownership, it would be devastating. But they provide that for money. But it's worth it. It's good. So they provide these easy to use easy to use APIs, and they have an awesome NFT finding API. So this is what that actually looks like in Swift. So you have this thing in Swift. This is like your Swift equivalent of a fetch. You have this URL request. And it's kind of funny because the API uses JSON RPC. So you have to throw in all these weird params in here. But you use the method fetch NFT there in your parameters. You serialize your parameters into there. And then you just fire it off with URL session shared data task. And the response, right, you just decode. It says NFT data.self. I don't think you have visualization into what that is, but anytime you're doing any kind of network thing, like you actually have to type it out. You have to create like a type, like a TypeScript interface, so it knows what's coming back. But that's what NFT data is there. Then as far as loading files, because I can also load files from like my iCloud, if I just have samples that I just want to use, it's actually breathtakingly straightforward. If you have a button, you just say file importer, right? And that will literally pop up that little sheet that will let you run through that and pick whatever file you want. So you might ask, why would you want to play NFTs in a drum machine? What's the motivation there? If you've worked in music, you know it's a shit show. And if you look at this revenue breakdown of how you actually get paid for music, right? There's a lot of hands out, and the songwriter is not really one of them too much. So if you've ever tried clearing a sample, it's a breathtaking pain in the ass. If you were to use NFTs for everything from like samples all the way up to songs, right? What you can do is you can establish a clear lineage, right, of this collaborative ownership of works, right? So if I want to use a sample, if I want to sample somebody's shit, I just use their NFT, and it has the ID of that, and then when I create my thing, it says that I use their thing, and then if somebody raps over the shit that I made, then everybody gets paid down the line automatically, which I think has value. You know, the people are like, oh, like, what are you gonna do with this picture of like a cat on the telephone? But like, this kind of thing, I think actually it's a valid use case. And I saw this startup, they're called Endless FM. And that's really cool. They're already in on this, where they let people make beats together collaboratively on the internet. And then people who provide the samples or provide the works, right? They can all get paid from using their shit. You could create shit, people can use it. And it's that same kind of thing of everyone getting paid. So it's definitely a space worth exploring in my mind. I'd like to give shout outs to a couple folks. First of all, RenderATL for having me back. Best conference ever, despite this bitch ass sun. Rushab & Co., my boy who made this crazy ass chain. Big shout out to him. He's an ATL. If you want to holler at him, let me know. I'll hook it up. My boy Eric, Ricardo, and Austin, who helped me along the way, because I don't know Swift. I do a little bit more now. When I'm building this, I'm like, hey guys, can you help me? Yeah, so that's my talk. Thank you guys so much.